I looked now upon the world as a thing remote, which I had nothing to do with, no expectations from, and indeed no desires about. In a word, I had nothing indeed to do with it, nor was ever likely to have. So I thought it looked, as we may perhaps look upon it hereafter, as a place I had lived in, but was come out of. So, well might I say, as Father Abraham to Dives, between me and thee is a great gulf fixed.
I wish to present to you here a collection of thoughts, ideas, indeed revelations that have occurred to me since I left the confines of what is traditionally called civilized society some 3 years ago.
There is a blissful beauty on offer from the world, and you get given a choice. Do you want to take this blissful beauty, this content, this exceedingly wholesome goodness, and fill yourself with that, all the riches, all of that nutritious goodness that's on offer? Do you wish to take that, fill yourself till you're brimming with that? Or do you want to fill your mind with tales of all these people who have got lost down a cul-de-sac, detached, full of fear and distaste?
Now, deep in the British jungle.
Jesse Watson.
Some 3 years ago, I set out across the British Isles on a quest to reconnect with my homeland and the goodness within it. For my mind was set on reclaiming dignity, meaning, and indeed hope, in a landscape fallen to a state which to me seemed intent on outlawing all three. After 2 years living on the road, those travels came to a shuddering halt when my old van broke down atop a little mountain in the land of the dragons. The rational man in me decreed then that I should spend the last few pounds I had getting towed to safety. Besides, he reasoned, it really was time I acted my age and returned to a more respectable way of life. The unreasonable man in me said something else entirely, however, for he had a niggling feeling he was exactly where he was supposed to be, and so wished to find out what would happen if I did the unthinkable and simply offered myself to the hands of fate upon the mountain, as it were. As is the way of such things, it was at this moment that a stranger appeared at my van door, and, with insight better befitting an old friend, they counselled me in no uncertain terms, to stay exactly where I was. So, that I did. Thus I found myself living alone, on a pittance, with naught but my feet to carry me about the slopes of the little mountain you join me upon here. 4 seasons later, having experienced there a forgotten way of life that blessed me with a kind of enduring peace of mind, I can only describe as perfect bliss, I came down from that mountain. I have then spent over a year working on this film since, because I am distinctly aware that the state of serenity I came to know there is generally considered the stuff of fairy tales today. My experience, however, says that this is very likely due to the vast majority spending their entire lives avoiding all those things that might otherwise bless them with the serenity I found upon that mountain. This film then presents both a philosophical and practical guide to the way of life I led upon that mountain, so you might learn through it, as I did, that the true riches of this world are given freely to those who make the time to receive them. But what of this rebel Briton, you may well ask? Well, what use is rebellion? Indeed, what use is freedom if it does not provide contentment? Moreover, in a state offering its most loyal a life of fear, resentment, and self-loathing, standing strong, well and satisfied on your own 2 feet is, to my eye, the ultimate act of defiance. I hope then that by the end of this film you will recognize that there is another way for those with the courage to walk out alone and leave behind all those things you never needed in the first place. Those of you who have been subscribed to my channel for a few years will know this. I spent 8 months from the summer of 2021, the end of the summer, through to the Easter Day 2022 in a little shelter I built myself in this Dingley Dell in Cornwall. And fair to say, although it's a rather woolly term, a lot of deep healing took place there for me. And it was after that I got my little blue van and went off to travelling around the British Isles and Ireland, and began making the megalithic films on my channel. Well, at the end of that period, the other fellow who was staying on that land came down to my camp, and he said, "I think, Jess, it's time you came back. It's time we integrated you back into society. It's time you came back to reality." And I remember at the time almost struggling not to burst out laughing, because I'd spent that 8 months going and cutting my wood, carrying it across the forest floor, drawing my water from a little spring coming bubbling out of a little bog, listening to the crows coming home to roost, and on a stormy night to the sea booming against a cliff a couple of miles away on the coast, and occasionally being awoken as a great tree fell suddenly in a storm, crashing to the ground, and enjoying all the countless serene little moments that come when you are out living with nothing between you and the natural world. And so when he said, "I think it's time you come back to reality," I almost laughed, because I knew in my bones through and through at that moment that it wasn't me that had lost sight of reality. It was the world he was living in many ways, that had become detached and cut off. Aye.
Now then, universe, I just had to mention the dawn this morning. Those golden hues, the pink far in the distance, the rays breaking through the mist over the mountain yonder. You really outdid yourself there. And this buzzard reeling overhead, truly it is a wonder to behold. As for the stars last night, the infinite expanse of space, positively miraculous. I haven't the foggiest idea how you did it. Anyway, just had to say, you're doing fine work. You keep going, good lad. You keep going. Good lad. Good lad. Why, bloody wondrous. Just for a moment. You see, look out here. See how beautiful this is?
Isn't it beautiful? It doesn't come across on camera. You're seeing a tiny piece of it. But just down in this field below me here, there's a herd of horses and their foals walking. I spent some time night before last under a perfect quarter moon walking with that herd. They've got to know me, so they accept me. Walking with this herd of horses and their foals under this perfect quarter moon in the deep dusk
Evening, fella.
as it was turning to night, walking across this silent moorland with this herd of horses. And that was perfect. What I saw then, walking with them, hearing them munching the grass as they went in this very still, silent air of that evening, with the moon hanging above, so still and quiet I could hear a sheep baaing a mile distant, coming across the vale. The way I'm going to put this, what I've been understanding for myself, and this is not to say everybody shares the same route to finding something of a bliss, but I think there are probably shared qualities or some things that might guide. And I think it's important because it's a resource. That's what I'm finding. If you find yourself, if you can get yourself, you take it seriously and you get yourself into a position where you feel truly content and you feel a wonder in life, you look out onto a world and you know it is good. It's like you can sink a well into that wonder that is this world and tap and draw out peace and content from the hills themselves, and you can export that. It takes no effort, but the calm and the something which I think we call in some places, like it's a dangerous word with so many associations. Something light and good, and the word I was going to say was holy, comes out of that. Comes out of your relationship, your appreciation of the beauty of the world around you. I can't be out here, look across this landscape and think that the world is about to end and things are all bad and curse the man and all the rest of it. You can't help but look across this, and when the spring comes and the wildflowers come and it's verdant and green, you can't help. There is no it's immediately obvious to me in that place that you can't take it upon yourself to go around preaching some doomsday prophecy when this is what's in front of you. When you're looking at sunsets that look like they were painted in some Jehovah's Witness Watchtower magazine, in that they're so staggeringly glorious, they almost look over the top. You can't maintain those kind of that doomsday aspect. You just can't. You have to start accepting that there is a blissful beauty on offer from the world. And you get given a choice. Do you want to take this blissful beauty, this content, this exceedingly wholesome goodness? Do you want to fill yourself with that? All the riches, all of that nutritious goodness that's on offer there. Do you wish to take that, fill yourself till you're brimming with that, till you're overflowing with it, till you lie in bed, wake up in the morning with a smile on your face at just the thought that you're existing on this blissful planet? Or do you want to fill your mind with tales of all these people who have got lost along the way and who have never found that content and that bliss, who can't reach it, who've got lost down a cul-de-sac, detached, full of fear and worry and distaste.
They say there's no such thing as fairy folk. Still, on the wind I hear their pipers call. They say that unicorns are make-believe, yet 'neath the moon I've seen them standing tall. They'll ask for proof as dragons roar above, then scoff as giants bellow from below. Indeed, to every memory of the land, they'll shake their heads and proclaim 'tis not so. Now gift them fruits, they'll say they're ripe too soon, then raise their fists and cry, the sun spells doom. Come rain or shine, they're ready to complain. The air itself they look on with disdain.
They'll wail and shout, feign tears for Mother Earth, yet with each breath they'll name her nature cursed. They'll teach the youth to damn both friend and foe, with chain and yoke make equal high and low. So now 'tis clear they're desperate to defile all blessings offered by these ancient isles, yet gifts refused they cannot hope to claim, nor fertile instinct can their censure tame. So life, despite their protest, rages on, for shameless stands the oak of Albion.
This grass, these plants, this view, that's the wonder of the universe. That's the wellspring of life. This is what you can draw your power of, what you can draw goodness from, that will comfort you. This very material world is full of goodness for us, for our eyes, for our mind, that it is rich and overflowing. There's an abundant source of wonder. What I'm trying to get to is, if you have the arrogance to try to get to your very best, the arrogance to think, maybe I can become something good. Maybe I have it in me. If you have the conceit to dream it and seek that. And so get yourself in a place where you can sink your well into this wondrous world and draw your energy from it and be filled with it, and find in that, accept that offer of bliss offered there. You can export that to those who are entangled and cannot find that peace. You can export it. You can export that resource and bring some good influence, some light to those who are stuck there, and let them know it's worth going for. And I think it's very important that some of us do that. at you, looking all majestic and everything. Through that, what we draw out, that we find and embody the strength to wholeheartedly dismiss all those doomsday prophecies and all the rest of that dross and say, no, sorry, this is a wonderful world full of magic and miracles, and I look upon it every day. You open a door through to something there, not just for yourself, but for other people. And that's what I mean. It takes a certain kind of bravado to dare do that. Am I going to publish this? Something I just wanted to try and put into words. And by the way, there's no permanence to what I'm talking about. But you become more resilient. If you can fill yourself up with that, from that well sunken into this beautiful world, if you can fill yourself up with that, when a conflict appears, you can find a way through it much quicker because you know what you're looking for, and you can turn it to gold much more easily because you're touching something. You've been close to that goodness, so when something threatens it, you're in a much stronger position to step aside and to avoid spiraling down.
consider for a moment, if you will, that peace of mind and the happiness that comes with it grows out of contentment, and contentment grows out of a sense of appreciation for that which surrounds us, a sense that all is well. This being so, since nothing can more reliably offer opportunity for appreciation than the wonders of the natural world, setting out to create a life placing one's feet firmly within that world for the majority of our waking hours surely offers us the best chance of finding peace, and so, I think it's fair to say, happiness and good health in both mind and body. Having enjoyed something I can only describe as bliss, as my normal state over long periods of months whilst living immersed in the natural world upon this mountain, I am now keenly aware that that state comes and goes in direct relation to the amount of time I spend out on the land, or conversely, sat staring at my phone editing this film, for example. The sad fact is, however, that many today never come to know this state, or even that it is a real possibility on offer in life. This being so, those seeking that inner peace more often than not look to religion or philosophy, psychedelics or nutrition, therapy or psychology. Yet, if my experience is anything to go by, what is actually being sought there is the forgotten state of blissful content that a life immersed in the natural world provides, most likely because it is our natural habitat, and therefore, naturally, plays upon our senses in all the right ways to assure us that all is well. So here I wish to drive home the point that our state of mind is, for the most part, determined by that which surrounds us in the day-to-day. So, just as you are what you eat, I say, you are how you live. I think part of me arriving in a place where I was receptive and able to fully appreciate and drink of this beautiful space and really get the most out of it. In very simple terms, I had to get myself in a position where I felt really, truly good about myself and had an affection for myself. There was a poem in that film that I made, The Many-Faced Wanderer, at the end, which was partly, I think, in a way, the beginning of this. But it was about remembering the boy I was. When I was a lad. And remembering the sort of innocent aspect of that boy's little world. Young man, actually. Young man's. There was a kind of specific point, 17, 18 years old. Just remembering what he was like and before he would have gone out into the world. And I looked at him and I thought that was a nice lad. He was a nice lad. He didn't know a lot. He had his problems and all the rest of it, as everybody does. But he was a nice lad, and he meant well. He was full of dreams and all the rest of it. So I think for me, partly the journey to finding myself, to getting myself in a place where I felt a real affection for who I was in remembering that lad. and that he's still inside me. And that he was kind of beautiful. Lit red, awash, 100 kindred revellers glow. So seeing I revolve myself about Kay's key. There, freed beyond full circle's lock, I, tumbling pin of brass, loosed drop, to fall within this vault of flesh, beneath glittering domes of neurons meshed, and come to rest at last, within time's tomb of selves long past. So, having slipped beneath the present's blade, that unending tally of choices made, grim herald's march of approaching past is here stilled. No more that mortal dreads tattoo, unceasing, indelible, drilled. No more chaotic glyphs of dreams once won and lost. No more those moments infinite tossed, heaped about my golden boss, till those towering mounds of dross divide my eye from all that divine in that once I lost. No more. So enthralled I dance, spry at last, through the vault of time behind my eyes, and there stumble across my eye long past. O fair youth, dreamer yet to live, slight form reborn, what it is to meet your gaze within mine own. O tender boy, prodigal son returned, what it is to share again this breath with thee, to greet that little world thine own, to share that scent of fortune for you half grown. O my truest friend, mine own returned, stand now firm in me. So, whilst Pan's hoard pounds o'er this heartbeat's rhythm slowed, time turns full circle, and in one moment's glory blessed, his stony face softens to a smile.
That to me was like the beginning point, I think. It was a very important thing that opened a door for me into a place where I could lie in bed and sort of feel I was with somebody I loved, even though I was alone. And that was that lad in me. Very noisy, these birds, very noisy. And the second bit is a little bit more difficult, that I felt that I was actually meaning to add here. Is I've naturally, since I've been on the road, I've had a lot of time on my own, a lot of peace, a lot of time on my own to work through issues I had. I was pretty flipping messed up a few years ago. Well, there was some very dark things that happened. I was very angry about them. But I gave myself a lot of time to let all that stuff settle, think through it and work through it and pay attention to it. So I put that behind me. And while that was happening, which is no great revelation, everybody, all got to sort out our heads. But while that was happening, I naturally found
was on my own a great deal of the time, sort of living in a funny way. Although I was in a van, I was kind of living the hermit's existence in a kind of way. And in with that, I naturally found myself just almost stopping drinking, for example. And there've been periods in my life sometimes where I've smoked a little bit of the other. But I stopped whilst on the road. That fell away to leave me in a place where I'm receptive to the beauty of the world around me and feeling clear-headed. It's a really big thing. It's a really big thing. Like if you want to draw the most from a beautiful landscape, if you've got that kind of blurred blockage, you're not going to touch the most vibrant reality of it. I don't think. I'm not saying Puritanism here. I'm just saying, it's about finding a more stable resource of blissful content than those things. And along with that, basically being good. And that doesn't mean, I don't mean that like I don't mean saintly and not in a dogmatic way, I don't think. I mean in a very simple way, behaving in a way that as a child we know, I think, we have that innocent sense of right and wrong as a child to a degree, so we'll feel guilty. And it's not just our parents who are telling us. If we thieve something that isn't ours, we know we're kind of hurting the person we've taken it from. If we betray a friend, we know we're kind of betraying them, somebody who cares about us. If our parent goes off and sleeps with the next door neighbour, we know that they've betrayed something there. And so I think in that simplest design being the best design is just avoiding things like that so that we feel good about ourselves, and can then feel we're at one with the goodness around us. We don't have our minds full of conflict. We can look out at the beautiful world and feel part of it and feel that we've got a beauty to ourselves. I think you probably know what I'm getting at. Just the preparing yourself to be receptive so that you can receive that warmth and comfort and wonder of the world outside and translate it into love somehow in yourself. And for that, I think we need to some degree, feel like we actually authentically represent something good. I wish to share with you now how I won acceptance from local residents during my stay upon this mountain, as a very unconventional newcomer arriving in a deeply traditional rural community. I draw your attention to this apparent divide, as over the course of my life I have witnessed countless people fail to bridge that gap after a move into the countryside, and consequently end up believing themselves victims of prejudice against outsiders. In my experience, however, those thus affected are invariably idealists at heart, who hold to the view that they should be accepted on face value by the community into which they move. Here then we find what I believe to be the most important philosophical question anyone wishing to command their own destiny can consider. That is the question of idealism versus realism. Becoming conscious and in command of which of these two outlooks presides over our thinking is, in my experience, the keystone to peace of mind, and likewise determines whether we come into conflict or live in relative peace with others. Our leaning toward idealism or realism determines the standards by which we judge what is satisfactory, and so that decides the way in which we perceive ourselves, the behaviour of others, and ultimately our view of society at large. It is then no exaggeration to say that the reality we experience is largely determined by the position we hold between these two poles. The most obvious issue arising from this is that, if we compare what we meet in life to a set of ideals that never, or only very rarely, manifest, we can spend our entire lives in a pitched battle against reality itself. Sun Tzu said, "Never fight a battle you cannot win." Now then, no few of us start out as idealists. I suggest this may, in part, be because children are, quite rightly, disciplined to hold to a moral code by parents and schooling, and are therefore, I think, inadvertently taught to be idealists, through being given the impression that the standards of behaviour, indeed the morals they have been held to, are the standards by which society functions. Sadly, this is not the case. The angry young man or woman is therefore often so due to them finding this out when they step out into the big bad world, and discovering then that people who genuinely adhere to that moral code, particularly when something of value is up for grabs, are in fact the exception to the rule. So it is that the mountain says, "Ideals at odds with nature are the cause of all our troubles." The traditional counterpoint to the idealism of youth is the wisdom of age. To my eyes, this wisdom, in those who acquire it, represents a shift from idealism to realism. In those with a semblance of awareness, this shift occurs naturally, through their life experience granting an understanding of what can and cannot be realistically expected of others, according to their nature and the traits they exhibit. This wisdom can then, in turn, be applied to one's expectations of society on the whole, and so, where the young idealist is enraged by the injustices they perceive in the world, the wise old realist replies, "That's life, kiddo." The comparison of these two states then raises a deeply contentious question. That is it better to live as an idealist, righteously fighting against the odds, or a realist who quietly accepts things the way they are? The trouble is, realism has its dark side too, for reality has its dark side. This truth can and is then commonly put forward by the realist as a reason not to be concerned, or perhaps to expend energy dwelling upon things which are perhaps destructive or even outright abusive. So, with a philosophical shrug of the shoulders, the realist accepts reality just the way it is, warts and all. This kind of all-encompassing acceptance, that which I've watched turn on occasion the guilty into gurus, may be perfectly peaceful for those enjoying it, but look behind that serene repose, and you may glimpse a frightful kind of moral bankruptcy, for pain, suffering, and abuse are now accepted realities in this guru's world. For accepting everything just the way it is means anything goes. So, how are these two positions balanced? How are the pitfalls of both idealism and realism avoided, and the genuinely useful functions of both brought to the fore? In my experience, stated plainly, high ideals, if achievable, or at least potentially achievable, serve well as a compass for our own behaviour and as a guide in our endeavours, whether that be whilst learning, working, or creating a meaningful life that satisfies. A meaningful life means, I think, a satisfying story, a success, somehow, probably against the odds. Summed up in the words of Joseph Campbell, I'm speaking of the hero's journey. In my experience, it is the seeking of one ideal or another that begins each new chapter on that journey. Whether that ideal is a new home, a job, a partner, or something far loftier, an ideal brings with it a vision, and that vision is our call to action and the guide through the quest that follows. The ideals we go in search of obviously change and evolve as life unfolds, as we learn and mature, but without them we have nothing to aspire to, and therefore nothing to get us off our backsides. And so I believe, personally, that ideals are, whatever they are, indispensable to the creation of a meaningful life. Now, if we succeed in bringing something of an ideal into being through our personal endeavours, this then stands as an inspiration to others, so we lead by example in presenting or perhaps representing that ideal. Now, when dealing with others, realism is, in my experience, far more productive. That is, expectations that account for common weaknesses, namely all those things it's impolite to speak of, such as low intelligence and poor reasoning, lack of awareness or cowardice. More importantly, I think, realism means respecting all those troublesome remnants of natural instinct commonly driving people's behaviour, whether they admit it or not, such as the mating game, seeking and maintaining status, guarding territory and resources, etc. Respecting these traits and tendencies, as opposed to dismissing them as politically incorrect or outdated, means firstly that we can forgive their appearance, but more importantly, expecting these traits to hold sway, particularly when dealing with groups, allows one to realistically predict and therefore effectively manage what is likely to transpire in those interactions. So, knowing the way things are in old rural communities, when I parked myself upon this mountain, I did not expect to be accepted for who I was. On the contrary, as a van dweller, I expected to be presumed guilty through association with thieves, dopeheads and doilies. As an outsider, to be viewed with suspicion and distrust. As an incomer, to meet a cold shoulder from the long-standing resident. If I hung around, I expected to be tested long and hard before being accepted. And if I weathered all this and decided to settle for good, I expected to be regarded as an outsider for the rest of my days here. This may sound pessimistic, defeatist even, but that judgment itself comes from an idealistic perspective. Expecting these things actually grants me optimism, for if they do not appear, I am pleasantly surprised, and if they do, I am not thwarted by frustration and disappointment in meeting those realities. Quite the opposite. You see, to me, the reception I received upon this mountain is absolutely ideal, because it tells me that the minds of these people are set on guarding what I have come to love here. So I respected their guardedness, their suspicions, and indeed their confrontations, as perfectly valid tests of my character, seeking to define whether I was worthy of their trust. And that is why I have been welcomed here. I survive on about £200 a month at the minute. And I would quite like to reduce that. I possibly could if I was a little bit more careful. Because I have no bills. No bills. I have no bills. I have a pay-as-you-go phone, SIM card in my phone. I make all my films on my phone. Everything. I run that off solar power that's on my roof. I bought those solar panels for £300 back in 2021, end of 2021 I think. So that's it, £300 for the couple of 100 watts of solar. I could maybe do with another 100 watts, but that's it. And I've got used to that. Because, yeah, if you want the space to be creative, to think, to do all of these things, if you're having to work 40 hours a week in some mundane job, a building site, whatever, I've done it, been there, you simply don't have the energy to do anything else, really. You get stuck in that. You get stuck in that hamster wheel, grinding. And actually, when you look at it, it's like, well, what am I actually buying here? What am I actually getting out of this? I'm getting, you know, maybe turning over money, but I'm not actually accruing anything. So for me, that creative time, that space that you can, if you cut down your costs right down and you accept a little bit of hardship for that, you can build a different kind of capital. Particularly if you're artistic. Like in Britain today, I don't want to be held by, I don't want to go off and get grants and be held by the ethics and the flipping political, you know, agendas of arts funding councils, which is the way it is a lot of the time. I want to retain my independence. And likewise, yeah, I don't want to spend the majority of my energy and waking hours in a job where I'm really just taking money to give to a landlord. Even things like, you know, snacks and crisp. I used to be a great snacker. All of that stuff is just gone. I'm just kind of happy now these days. I eat very simply, because when you start finding something really good and you start in a place where you're feeling really good, you don't need all those little treats to make you feel better, because you feel good anyway. And yeah, my shoes might not be brand new things, but I know I'm one of the richest men in Britain. It's a funny one, you know, with the stuff that actually matters.
In a word, the nature and experience of things dictated to me upon just reflection that all the good things of this world are no further good to us than they are for our use, and that whatever we may heap up to give others, we enjoy just as much as we can use, and no more. The most covetous, griping miser in the world would have been cured of the vice of covetousness if he had been in my case, for I possessed infinitely more than I knew what to do with.
There's something right at the heart of this film that I wish to place in here. Shh. Shh. I'm filming. In reducing my costs, it's taught me something through that necessity. which has hugely improved my quality of life. Something which goes against everything the contemporary paradigm tells us about improving our existence. And that is that in having had the mundane essentials necessary for survival, in having had the convenience by which those things are acquired taken away, it has meant that I now draw great satisfaction and pleasure from those mundane essentials of survival, such as fetching water, for example. It's often mentioned in documentation of people living in a third world, for example, how difficult it is for them to have to fetch their water, to walk however far they walk to fetch water. But I found that now that I don't have running water, I have to walk half a mile every 3 or 4 days, depending on how much I'm using, to the spring, fill up my water butts, wait for a moment where it's dry if it's raining, and hopefully have a day where it's not raining beforehand, so that there isn't too much runoff water going into that spring, so that the water's nice and clear. Then I fill up my 20 litres of butts and walk back that half a mile with that 20 kilos on my back. All of that contemporary paradigm would say that's a hardship that will reduce quality of life. But it's completely the inverse in my experience. The effort that I have to put in to getting that water means that when I get back to my van and I pour that first glass of water from one of those butts, and it's fresh and perfectly pure, untampered with water, no chlorine or anything, I get huge satisfaction from drinking that chilled liquid, that aqua vitae, from that first sip. And having that stock there, I get satisfaction out of it every 3 or 4 days when I replenish it. The satisfaction in that water. And that's all something which is completely absent if you're getting your water from a tap, guaranteed. There's no way that we don't take that for granted when it's a guaranteed convenience for us. We might attempt to do intellectual somersaults to feel some gratitude for it, but it's all but impossible in the way our minds work to really feel gratitude for something that is guaranteed and perfectly convenient. It's the effort I have to put into fetching that water which makes it satisfying and pleasing. And that satisfaction is renewed every 3 days. if you plumb in a tap in your own building, if you build a house and you plumb in a tap, you will get some satisfaction from having done that work. And the first time you turn it on and you have water, yeah, you'll get some satisfaction from that, from having put that effort in. But very quickly, that satisfaction from that water will evaporate away. And it's not the case for me. I'm finding in having to get that water, the fact that I have to continually put in that effort means I continually draw satisfaction from it. There's a whole range of things. My food now, I get satisfaction from it because I have to put in work, and because I have to keep my costs very low, it's no longer guaranteed. And there have been moments where I've gone a little bit hungry and I haven't had everything I need. I've had to go out and take a rabbit on occasion to find some protein when times have been a little bit hard. And it was actually needed. It wasn't some philosophical, it wasn't a game that I went out and took that rabbit. It wasn't I actually needed it. So there wasn't any of those moral debates about hunting, taking a life. None of those mattered at that moment, because I knew I actually needed it. It was actually done for my survival, because I was feeling weak. And the satisfaction in that little experience, it was like coming home, taking that meal, finding that picking up that rabbit and taking that meal off the land, and knowing that I had put the effort in and got that protein out of my own skill and ability, preparing that food. It's huge satisfaction and a huge connection with this land coming out of that, growing out of that. But likewise, the food I get from the shop now, because I have to carry it, walk with it. And likewise, it's not an easy convenience. Even having a loaf of bread now sat on my sideboard, I get satisfaction out of it. Even something as mundane as going to the toilet, because I have to dig a hole. And there's an aesthetic purity to it. There is. In digging a hole, nothing but clean organic matter goes into that hole. The turf's put back on, it's all covered up without a trace. There's a satisfaction to that even. And likewise, in the guarantee of those things being taken away, it's not just in gaining those things when they have run out. It's also in them occasionally being denied and having to adapt and put up to get through those little tests of when those things run out. If you have to go a little bit hungry, if on occasion if my solar power, if I'm not drawing enough power, then my electricity goes off and I have to find other ways to light, etc. All those little tests that are continually ongoing, they build confidence and a feeling they build resilience and a feeling that I'm capable of adapting. Well, it's not a feeling. I know I'm capable of adapting. I know I'm perfectly capable of going through a time where I might not have enough to eat, where my power might go off, etc. I'm perfectly capable today, and I know it, of getting through that. And that builds it builds character and resilience and strength, confidence, real confidence, because I know I can get through it. So if I'm in a position today where any of those things are threatened, it's a far lesser threat. which is a hugely important thing. Even if I was threatened with homelessness today, I know I can get through it and stay relatively well with the skills I have. That is a huge thing, which takes away so much of those fears and things which hold us and lock us down because we're scared of losing them. I'm not scared, really, of losing them. Aye, missus. Half the herd's in the fog there. I was rather hoping it was going to come out and meet us. But no. Yes, that is right at the heart of this film and what I've been really learning as I've been making this film. It's a huge thing. Quality of life is dramatically improved by having to put effort in for those essentials. We gain pleasure and satisfaction from what comes out the other end. So this I'm talking about here in reducing costs, it has real deep philosophical repercussions in life that are hugely advantageous. And it's exactly the opposite of what we're led to believe. We're led to believe convenience and ease of access to all these things will improve quality of life. Well, it's not so in my experience. It's quite the reverse. Aye. Perfect timing, love. I had now brought my state of life to be much easier in itself than it was at first, and much easier to my mind as well as to my body. I frequently sat down to meat with thankfulness and admired the hand of God's providence, which had thus spread my table in the wilderness. I learned to look more upon the bright side of my condition and less upon the dark side, and to consider what I enjoyed rather than what I wanted. And this gave me sometimes such secret comforts that I cannot express them. Now then, Arthur, it's time for your hypnotherapy session. You gonna lie down, eh? All right? Come on. Do you good. Well, scratch there. Okay. That's it. You get comfortable. Good lad.
son of Uther, noblest of steeds. Listening. Noblest of steeds shall carry me upon your back. Together we shall move as one. Yes. Legend shall be written about our story. They will, my boy. Yes. So, you are tense. Relax. There is nothing for a steed such as you to fear. It is for others to fear. Do you not think, my boy? For you are the finest steed in all the world, the noblest, the most dignified. Swift as the wind, bright as the stars, you shall shine in the minds of future storytellers. They shall say, look, those two, they are like Arthur and Jesse, the very best of friends, understanding one another perfectly. Man and majestic beast in perfect harmony. Yes. Good. You hear it. You hear it. Listen to the fairy song.
To conclude this work, I wish to ask you to imagine, if you will, that a glorious revolution takes place this Sunday in the United Kingdom. The government is overthrown, without a shot being fired, of course, and all those policies, laws and regulations so vexing to the population are summarily binned. Cheering crowds gather on the streets afterwards, flags flutter, and a great celebration takes place, for our beloved homeland has been saved. But consider the day after those victory celebrations now. You go back to work on Monday morning, and as the shared excitement of the weekend subsides, you look around you and sigh. For you see then that everything making up day-to-day life remains, more or less, unchanged. This is what Monday morning would inevitably bring, for though a government can be changed overnight, a mass of people, their way of thinking, their habits, and most importantly, their nature cannot be. It is, after all, widely accepted that there is no surer path to frustration than trying to change someone other than yourself. This means that, for the most part, peace, content, happiness, and indeed freedom are individual concerns. I wish then to leave you with an understanding that landed in my mind a few years ago when in an exceptionally difficult situation that left me feeling beaten by life. The understanding was this: there is no help coming. This stark realization, which I knew then to be absolutely true, silenced the self-pity then dwelling within me, and told me in no uncertain terms that if I wished to recover myself, moreover, if I wished to do those things I knew myself capable of, but had felt circumstance denied me the chance to achieve, and, ultimately, if I wished to see the best in me manifest, I had no choice but to lift myself to my feet and start realizing those dreams alone. I tell you this because I believe that was the day I won my freedom. Now then, good folk, if you have got this far, I hope you will forgive me for assuming that you have found something of value in this work. I hope you will then listen for a moment longer, because I wish to make you aware, as a truly independent artist, that I receive nothing from YouTube for any of the films I upload here, despite them running ads on them. You have, nonetheless, been watching a year's work, being that every part of this film, excepting the music and the 3 extracts from Robinson Crusoe, has been crafted by my own hand. This has meant thousands upon thousands of hours' work, writing, shooting, designing, narrating, editing, then rewriting, reshooting, redesigning, re-narrating and re-editing it all again and again in order for it to arrive at this standard, which I hope you will agree is not too shabby for a film made by one man alone on a phone from start to finish. Though I have carried out this work primarily to share something I heard no one else talking about that I felt was important, I have gone to such great lengths in the hope that the artistry I have put into this film would generate a little capital to help fund my next step on the road with good Arthur. We now live together in a paddock granted by a farmer in exchange for my labour, and I work elsewhere for my bread and butter. So, no, in case you are wondering, I do not live on benefits, since living on the proceeds of the state's taxation of my countrymen would entirely discredit what I have said here. Over the next year or two, while Arthur grows strong, I intend to build a very simple, lightweight wagon he can comfortably pull, and I am then in the process of training him to do this at the moment, as you can see. Then, if all goes well, we will be free to return to the mountaintops where we belong. So I ask now, in the tradition of the bards and buskers of old, that you put a few coins in my hat in exchange for the work you have enjoyed here, for a man cannot live on likes, comments and shares alone, though they are very much appreciated. To this end then, I ask you to click the link you'll find in my pinned comment below, which will take you to my donor box page, and there, in 2 minutes, you can throw as little as £3 my way. If everyone who watched this film contributed just that, it would make a real difference, for, as I hope I have made clear already, I can make a little money go a very long way. And of course, you will get to see more from Arthur and myself too that way, for I'll have more time to spend creatively. Thank you very much indeed. So, good people, all that is left to say now is, as always, stay dangerous. Cheerio. Bye.
I love you too, Arthur.